What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Ralph Waldo Emerson. There is a silent battle that decides the future of every person in this room, every young dreamer, every tired worker, every person who has ever said, "One day I will change my life." That battle is not against poverty alone, not against fear alone, not against talent, opportunity, or luck. It is a battle against inconsistency. Because many people do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because they cannot stay committed when excitement fades. They begin with fire, but they continue with excuses. They start strong, but they finish scattered. And in that gap between intention and action, success slips away. Listen carefully. Greatness is rarely destroyed by one big mistake. It is usually destroyed by small, repeated acts of neglect. A missed day, a weak decision, a broken promise to yourself, then another, and before long, the dream that once felt alive becomes a memory. This is why discipline matters. Discipline is the power to do what must be done, even when you do not feel like doing it. Consistency is the courage to keep going long after the emotion has left the room. Together, they become the hidden engine of every meaningful success story in history. This is not just a motivational idea. This is a law of life. And today, in this message, we are going to uncover why discipline and consistency is key to success. And so we continue from the truth we already established. Greatness is not destroyed by one big failure, but by small, repeated acts of neglect. That is where many people misunderstand success. They think success is born in a moment of glory, but in reality, success is born in the quiet place where nobody is watching, where nobody is applauding, where nobody is even aware of the struggle. A seed does not become a tree because it feels inspired. It becomes a tree because it remains in the soil, because it keeps absorbing what it needs, because it stays under pressure long enough to grow roots. And that is exactly how human success works. Before there is public achievement, there must first be private repetition. Before there is visible victory, there must first be invisible discipline. This is why so many people get discouraged. They want the fruit without respecting the roots. They want the harvest without enduring the process. But life does not work that way. A life of excellence is not built by occasional effort. It is built by repeated obedience to what is right. Look at Thomas Edison. Most people remember the light bulb, but they forget the countless attempts, the failures, the adjustments, the persistence. He did not create history by doing something once. He created history by refusing to quit after doing the right thing again and again, even when the result was not immediate. That is the hidden power of consistency. It teaches you that progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes progress is quiet, slow, and almost invisible. But if you stay faithful, it grows. History proves this in every generation. Benjamin Franklin did not become wise by accident. He built his life through structure, reflection, and daily self-discipline. He understood that character is not an event, it is a pattern. And that pattern is formed by repetition. One good choice repeated becomes a habit. One habit repeated becomes a character. One character sustained over time becomes a destiny. So when we say discipline and consistency is key to success, we are not speaking emotionally. We are speaking from the very architecture of human growth. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an action and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character." That is not merely poetic language. That is life in motion. What you repeat will eventually shape what you become. If you repeat laziness, you become weak. If you repeat excuses, you become unstable. But if you repeat discipline, you become dependable. If you repeat consistency, you become strong in ways that many people never see, but everyone eventually feels. And that is where the real test begins. Because discipline is easy when the desire is fresh. It is easy when the dream feels near. It is easy when the results are visible. But consistency reveals something deeper. It reveals whether your dream is real enough to survive boredom, delay, sacrifice, and silence. Think about a student who wants to master a subject. One day of study does not create mastery. A week of study does not guarantee it. But steady repetition, day after day, builds understanding. Or think about a leader who wants to earn trust. Trust is not built by one impressive speech. It is built by consistent integrity. People learn who you are by watching what you repeat when it is inconvenient. This is why the person who keeps showing up has power, not because they are always motivated, but because they understand that motivation is temporary while discipline is foundational. They know that success is not a sudden arrival, it is the reward of faithful repetition. You may not see the results yet. You may be planting habits that feel small. You may be waking up, studying, working, praying, building, practicing, and nobody may be noticing. But do not be deceived by the silence. Soil is silent too, yet roots are growing. So this is why discipline and consistency is key to success, because every great result begins as a repeated act of faith in the dark. And if you understand that, then you will stop despising the ordinary days. You will stop waiting for magical moments. You will begin to honor the process, respect the repetition, and protect your daily habits as if your future depends on them, because it does. That is the lesson of this chapter. Greatness is planted in repetition. What you do again and again will eventually become the evidence of who you are. And once you truly understand that, the next question is not whether discipline matters, but how discipline gives direction to your deepest desires. That is where our journey continues next. And now we move forward from the truth of the first chapter. Greatness is planted in repetition. Because once you understand that success is built in the quiet place, the next question becomes this: what gives that repetition meaning? Why does one person repeat good habits until they rise, while another repeats effort and still remains stuck? The answer is simple and powerful. Discipline gives direction to desire. Everybody has desire. Everybody wants something better. A better life, a better body, a better mind, better money, better relationships, better peace. But desire by itself is only energy. It is not yet wisdom. It is not yet success. A dream without discipline is like a ship with no compass. It may move fast, but it does not know where it is going. That is why so many people stay busy but never become effective. They are full of intentions, full of emotion, full of hope, but their lives are not governed by order. And when life is not governed by order, desire begins to scatter. One day it says, I will change. The next day it says, I am tired. One moment it says, I want more. The next moment it says, later. That is not the language of destiny. That is the language of distraction. Jim Rohn said, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. That is not just a clever line. It is a law of progress. Goals tell you what you want. Discipline tells you what it will cost. Goals inspire the mind. Discipline trains the life. Goals awaken possibility. Discipline turns possibility into reality. Think of a young athlete standing before a great season. He may dream of victory, applause, trophies, and recognition. But none of that comes from desire alone. It comes from training when tired, from repeating the drills when nobody is watching, from choosing preparation over comfort. And that is exactly why discipline and consistency is key to success, because desire may begin the journey, but discipline finishes it. History gives us clear evidence of this. Marcus Aurelius, a ruler of great power, understood that the real battle of life is not always outside us. It is inside us. He wrote about self-command, about refusing to be ruled by impulse, about living according to principle. That kind of thinking made him strong, not because he had no pressure, but because he had mastered response. He knew that a person who cannot govern himself cannot govern anything else. And that is a lesson every leader must learn. Leadership is not first the ability to command others. It is the ability to command oneself. A leader who cannot keep a promise, cannot keep a schedule, cannot keep focus, and cannot keep discipline will eventually lose trust. But a disciplined person becomes stable, and stability is one of the rarest forms of power in the modern world. Abraham Lincoln understood this too. He did not rise by impulse. He rose through persistence, learning, and restraint. He was shaped by hardship, but he was not ruled by it. He kept returning to the work. He kept sharpening his mind. He kept moving toward the responsibility before him. That is what discipline does. It takes raw desire and turns it into useful force. The Bible speaks in principle through life itself. Power without direction becomes waste. A river is useful because it flows within banks. Fire is useful because it is contained in a hearth. And human desire is useful only when it is guided by discipline. Without discipline, desire burns itself out. With discipline, desire becomes purpose in motion. So ask yourself honestly, what are you really trying to become? Because once you know that, your daily habits must answer the same question. If your vision is great but your habits are weak, your life will remain divided. But if your vision is clear and your discipline is strong, then your desire begins to serve your destiny. That is why the person who wins is not always the most gifted person. It is often the most directed person, the one who knows how to say no, the one who can delay pleasure, the one who keeps the same standard when tired, when alone, when discouraged, and when unseen. That person is not just dreaming, that person is building. You may not feel powerful every day. You may not wake up full of inspiration, but discipline is not asking you to feel strong every moment. It is asking you to remain faithful every moment. And when desire is shaped by discipline, your life stops being random and starts becoming intentional. So this is why discipline and consistency is key to success. Because discipline turns desire into direction, and direction turns effort into destiny. One without the other will fail, but together they create a life that can actually arrive where it is meant to go. And that is exactly why this chapter matters. The first chapter taught us that greatness is planted in repetition. This chapter teaches us that repetition must be guided by discipline, or it will never lead anywhere meaningful. But even that is not the whole story, because discipline alone is still not enough if the heart has no higher purpose. And that is where the next chapter takes us. And now we move deeper because chapter 2 taught us something powerful. Discipline gives direction to desire. That means desire is not enough, and discipline alone is not enough either. A person can be organized, focused, and even hardworking, yet still feel empty if there is no higher reason behind the effort. That is why the next truth matters so much. Consistency reveals the character of purpose. This is where the journey becomes personal, because when a person truly knows why they are living, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It becomes devotion. It becomes service. It becomes alignment. Purpose changes the meaning of sacrifice. Without purpose, consistency feels heavy. With purpose, consistency becomes noble. Think about a young man climbing the same hill every morning before sunrise. If he does not know why he is climbing, he will quit the moment the wind gets cold. But if he is climbing to become stronger, to protect a family, to build a future, to fulfill a calling, then every step has meaning. That is the difference purpose makes. It turns pain into progress. Viktor Frankl understood this better than almost anyone. In the midst of suffering beyond imagination, he discovered that the human being can endure almost anything if there is meaning. That is not just philosophy. That is truth tested by fire. He showed the world that purpose does not remove hardship, but it gives hardship a reason. And when a person has a reason, they can survive what would destroy someone else. This is exactly why discipline and consistency is key to success, because purpose keeps discipline alive when emotion dies. Winston Churchill also gave the world a lesson in purpose under pressure. He did not comfort a frightened nation with empty words. He called people to endurance, courage, and resolve. He knew that leadership is not only about standing in front of people, it is about giving people something worth standing for. That is what purpose does in a human life. It gives the farmers to Persia soul something greater than comfort to serve. And history proves this again and again. Abraham Lincoln did not simply work because he wanted success. He worked because he felt the weight of responsibility. He understood that life is not only about personal gain, it is about contribution. It is about becoming useful to something bigger than yourself. That is why consistency has power. When a person's habits are connected to purpose, they become willing to endure what others will not endure. C.S. Lewis once said that we are half-hearted creatures, fooling around with drink and ambition and pleasure when infinite joy is offered to us. That is the tragedy of many lives. They are busy but not purposeful, active but not aligned, moving but not advancing. A purposeful life is different. It may move slowly at times, but it moves in the right direction, and direction matters more than speed when destiny is on the line. So ask yourself, what are your repeated actions really serving? Are they serving your ego, your comfort, your image, or are they serving your calling, your growth, your future, your responsibility? Because consistency always reveals what matters most to you. You do not need to announce your purpose. Your habits will announce it for you. The way you spend your mornings, the way you handle pressure, the way you respond to delay, the way you keep showing up when it is hard, that is the real testimony of purpose. This is why the person with purpose can endure what others call impossible. They are not simply chasing results. They are building a life that means something. They understand that discipline without purpose becomes mechanical, but discipline with purpose becomes powerful. That is where strength is born. That is where peace is born. That is where true success begins to take shape. So this is why discipline and consistency is key to success, because purpose gives endurance to discipline, and consistency reveals whether your life is truly built on meaning or merely on mood. The one who knows their purpose will remain steady. The one who remains steady will become effective. And the one who becomes effective will eventually become fruitful. And that is the lesson of this chapter. Purpose is what gives consistency its soul. Chapter 1 taught us that greatness is planted in repetition. Chapter 2 taught us that discipline gives direction to desire. Now we understand that purpose gives meaning to consistency. But there is still one more battle to face, the battle within the mind and the daily war of faithfulness. And that is where the next chapter will take us. And now we arrive at the final battle, because chapter 1 taught us that greatness is planted in repetition. Chapter 2 showed us that discipline gives direction to desire. Chapter 3 revealed that purpose gives meaning to consistency. But even when a person understands all these truths, there remains one obstacle that every successful person must eventually face. The obstacle is not outside, it is inside. The greatest war of your life will never be against another person. It will never be against your competitors. It will never be against your circumstances. The greatest war is the battle between the person you are today and the person you were created to become. Every morning, that battle begins again. When the alarm clock rings, the battle begins. When nobody is watching, the battle begins. When excuses whisper in your mind, the battle begins. When comfort calls your name louder than your purpose, the battle begins. And the strange thing about this war is that most people never realize they are fighting it. They think success is about finding the perfect opportunity. They think success is about luck, talent, connections, or timing. But history repeatedly teaches us a different lesson. Success belongs to those who win the daily battles nobody sees. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have little time, but that we waste much of it." Think about that. Every person receives 24 hours. The successful person does not receive more time. The unsuccessful person does not receive less time. The difference is often found in what happens during the ordinary hours. One person invests them. Another person spends them. One person builds habits. Another person builds excuses. One person chooses growth. Another person chooses comfort. The gap begins small, but over years, that gap becomes destiny. That is why discipline and consistency is key to success, because success is not built in giant moments. It is built in daily choices. History gives us countless examples. Concise are the Wright brothers. When people looked at the sky, they saw impossibility. When the Wright brothers looked at the sky, they saw a problem that needed solving. Their journey was filled with failures. Experiments failed, machines failed, predictions failed, but they kept returning to the work, day after day, month after month, year after year. Most people would have quit long before success arrived, but they understood something powerful. The person who remains faithful to the process eventually reaches places others only dream about. That is exactly why discipline and consistency is key to success. The breakthrough was not created by one extraordinary day. It was created by thousands of ordinary days connected together. And perhaps that is what many people misunderstand about greatness. Greatness is usually boring before it becomes impressive. The champion repeats the same training. The musician repeats the same scales. The writer repeats the same practice. The entrepreneur repeats the same disciplined actions. The leader repeats the same principles. The world celebrates the outcome, but heaven and history recognize the process. Marcus Aurelius understood this truth deeply. As emperor of Rome, he could have been consumed by power, distraction, and pleasure. Instead, he reminded himself daily to govern his thoughts, to master his emotions, to remain faithful to his responsibilities. He knew something many people never learn. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can control who you become because of what happens to you. That is where true discipline lives, not in controlling circumstances, but in controlling response. Not in commanding the world, but in commanding yourself. And perhaps somebody listening today needs to hear this. You may feel discouraged because your progress seems slow. You may feel frustrated because your results are not visible. You may wonder whether your effort even matters. But remember the seed from chapter 1. Roots grow before fruit appears. Remember the lesson from chapter 2. Direction matters more than speed. Remember the lesson from chapter 3. Purpose gives strength to endure. And now remember this final truth. Faithfulness always works before success becomes visible. The tree does not stop growing because you cannot see the roots. The river does not stop flowing because you cannot see the source. And your progress does not stop simply because the results have not appeared yet. Keep showing up, keep learning, keep improving, keep building, keep moving, because every disciplined day is preparing a future that your current eyes cannot yet see. History proves that discipline and consistency is key to success. The lives of Lincoln, Edison, Franklin, Churchill, Frankel, and countless others all point to the same conclusion. Success is not a mystery. Success is the predictable result of faithful action repeated long enough. And that brings us to the final lesson of this chapter. The inner war is not won once, it is won daily. Every day you choose purpose over comfort. Every day you choose discipline over excuses. Every day you choose consistency over convenience. Every day you choose growth over stagnation. Those small victories become great victories. Those daily decisions become lifelong achievements. And that is why the principle behind discipline and consistency is key to success cannot be ignored. Because in the end, success is not determined by what you occasionally do. Success is determined by what you faithfully do over and over again. And now that we have traveled through repetition, discipline, purpose, and faithfulness, we are ready for the final conclusion, where all of these principles come together into one powerful truth that can transform an ordinary life into an extraordinary legacy.